Last season, we watched as the Washington Huskies had a tremendous breakout year. Led by superstar quarterback Michael Penix Jr. and first-year head coach Kalen DeBoer, the Huskies got off to a hot start and became one of the nation's most fun and interesting teams to watch. Besides those two, no one benefited from the rise of Washington football more than wide receiver Rome Odunze. If he would have entered the 2023 NFL Draft, some scouts believed he would have been a first-round pick, and some argue he has the most upside in the 2024 NFL Draft. Personally, I think he's the second best returning receiver in the country behind Marvin Harrison Jr., and at minimum, he is the most underrated. In today's video, I want to introduce you to who Rome Odunze is. We're going to talk about his crazy journey to get to this point, how great his Washington career has been so far, and why he could easily be a household name in just a couple of months. But before we get started, be sure to leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new and love college football content, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now, let's get started and talk about the insane rise of Rome Odunze. Going back in time, Rome has one of the more interesting names for a big-time player, so where the heck did that come from? His father picked out the name because he's always been a history buff. He said, quote, "My dad just really liked the Roman Empire with some of the key and cool things within it, and some of the cultural influence they had on the world. I guess that's why he named his son Rome." Early on, he was always seen as an athlete. Going back in time, at just 5 months old, he'd be laying on the ground and would reach to get a football that was being held above him, and would make his hand into fist and slam it on his knees. I guess the point of the story is that he always wanted a football, and this is when his mother knew that her son had insane athletic potential. By 9 months, he was walking and was riding a razor scooter by 1 year old, she said. At 2, he was riding a bike with no training wheels. When he was 4, Rome asked his parents if he could play tackle football, and when they signed him up for Pop Warner at 6, he played all over the field on both sides of the ball. His mom still remembers his favorite play from her son, as he had a 99-yard game-winning touchdown as an 8-year-old, and he also played baseball and basketball and loved soccer. Devin Hester was his favorite player, and his dad remembers Rome insisting on playing tackle football. He said, quote, "If I'm not playing tackle, I'm not playing football." He'd eventually arrive at Bishop Gorman High School, and at a place with so much prestige and talent, it's kind of hard to stand out there. He would show flash early on though, but was then hit with a major roadblock. As a sophomore, he would suffer a broken collarbone, but he would bounce back in a big way his junior year, as he had 60 catches for 1,347 yards and 15 touchdowns. Because of this, he started to blow up on the recruiting front as he gained multiple big-time offers. He was listed as the 3rd best player in the state of Nevada, behind quarterback Micah Bowens and tight end Darnell Washington. Schools from all over the country wanted Rome, and he would put himself on the map even more after his final year. As a senior, he caught 54 passes for 1,200 receiving yards and 15 touchdowns. He had at least 100 yards in 8 of the 13 games, and scored a touchdown in all 12, and scored a touchdown in 12 of them. He was named the Gatorade Nevada Football Player of the Year, and was also a star track runner, and arguably the best athlete in the state. In total at Gorman, he had 121 catches for 2,699 yards and 31 touchdowns. That was pretty dang good for a high school team loaded with so much talent. By all standards, Odunze should have been a 5-star recruit. He held 33 offers, ran like a gazelle, had insane stats, and played for a recruiting factory. They were even projecting him as a day 3 draft pick in high school. But where would he end up going? Well, he had offers from Bama, Florida, Oklahoma, Georgia, Michigan, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and USC, but ultimately Washington would win out. Apparently, he also fell in love with Duke, but his family really loved Washington being on the West Coast, and bonded with Huskies wide receivers coach and head coach Chris Peterson. He ended up choosing Washington and said, quote, "They have a great atmosphere up there and have been doing great things in the West. They haven't won a national championship yet, so they've got some space for players to get up there and make a big difference. I love their wide receivers coach who was recruiting him early on, and it meant a lot to be in contact with me throughout it all. It's just a great fit for me." This was a huge get for Washington, and this was one of the best wide receiver groups in school history, as scouts knew they were getting a diamond in Rome. So what was so great about him? Well, he had size, speed, and athleticism. When he got the ball in his hands, he'd always make the first person miss, and when you got to know him, he was a really good dude. He came from a good family, had a wonderful mom, and had a great work ethic. According to 24/7 Sports, Odunze was a 4-star recruit, the number 22 wideout, and the 135th best player in the class of 2020. So, how would he end up doing at Washington? When he arrived at Washington, he would generate plenty of buzz. One source said, quote, "There was a shock and awe element to his skill set. They were shocked at how fast he was, and they were calling him the fastest player to come to Washington since John Ross. In 2020, Odunze wouldn't get a chance to play a whole lot, as the world was in a crazy spot, and he ended up finishing with 6 catches for 72 yards. Going into 2021, many expected Odunze to break out, but unfortunately there were some factors that would hold the entire team back. 1 week before the opener, he would separate the AC joint in his shoulder, and he watched the first 3 games from the sideline. By that time, they had already lost to Montana and Michigan, and Washington's season was falling apart. Jimmy Lake was the new head coach, and it was a disastrous 2021 season. No one would have blamed Odunze for entering the portal, but he decided to come back. Kalen DeBoer had now taken the head coaching job after being at Fresno State, and they also retained Junior Adams, who was Washington's receivers coach. Odunze didn't want to play for another new coach, and the next day, Ryan Grubb's new offensive coordinator called and told him that his receivers coach would be leaving for Oregon, so that would throw another wrench in things. From there, the Huskies had brought in Purdue's wide receivers coach Jamarcus Shepard, who had coached up both Rondale Moore and David Bell there. 2 days later, Rome announced he would stay at Washington, and now it was time for him to break out. Both him and Jalen McMillan enjoyed breakout seasons, as early on, Rome showcased his potential. He had 7 catches for 84 yards and a touchdown against Kent State, and then 2 weeks later had 8 catches for 161 yards and a touchdown in a win over Stanford. They had also knocked off number 11 Michigan State, so Washington all of a sudden had a ton of hype. From there, he'd have 8 catches for 116 yards and 2 touchdowns against UCLA, and had 9 catches for 115 yards against Arizona State, but both of those games would end up being losses. The Huskies were now 3-2, but then they would catch fire. Against Arizona, he had 9 catches for 170 yards and 2 touchdowns, had 6 catches and a win over Cal, 7 catches for 100 yards and a win over number 23 Oregon State, and then would have 6 catches in a huge road victory over number 6 Oregon. Unfortunately, a couple more dominoes had to fall their way if they wanted to win the division, but he would do his best. He helped them beat Colorado, and then had 5 catches for 157 yards and a touchdown against Washington State. Ultimately, they would not get a chance to play in the Pac-12 championship, but they had a 10-2 regular season. They'd be matched up to play number 20 Texas in the Alamo Bowl, where they won 27-20, and Rome had an insane season. He finished with 75 catches for 1,145 yards and 7 touchdowns. Odunze was one of the top wide receivers in the country, but would decide to bypass the 2023 NFL Draft. Pro Football Focus has named him on the 2023 Offense All-Returning Team, which is another way of saying he's a preseason All-American. Over his career, he has over 100 catches and 12 touchdowns, and while he could have easily left for the NFL, their superstar quarterback also came back, which helped Rome come back. He said, quote, "Michael Penix was a factor for sure. I think Mike wants me back, and we talked it up, and I decided to come back, and I congratulated him." Washington brings back a ton of players, brings back their star quarterback, and they should have a chance to make a serious run at the college football playoff, in my opinion. Honestly, there are 2 roads here. Either Odunze has a terrible season and still gets drafted late, or he once again becomes the main weapon and solidifies himself as a first-round pick. Currently, according to NFL Mock Database, he's a projected first-round pick and the 20th best prospect. This is a pretty big deal, and scouts think this guy has insane potential. One said, quote, "Listed at 6'3", Odunze has the ideal frame for a number 1 receiver. Size isn't a skill by itself, but Odunze puts this to good use by dominating opposing defensive backs at the line of scrimmage and in contested catch situations. He's also an impressive athlete for his size, with ideal straight line speed and surprising short area quickness and route running ability for a bigger receiver. Throw all those physical traits in with a competitive mentality and confident playing style, and you have a recipe for a superstar playmaker in the NFL. I'm going to have a bold take here. Honestly, I think he's going to be this year's Quentin Johnston, and I'm excited to see what he's going to do this season and at the next level. But what do you guys think? If you're a Washington fan, what do you think of this year's team? What do you think of Rome Odunze? And what player/prospect should I take a look at next? Be sure to let me know down below. Leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen, including my video about the rise of Michael Penix Jr. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.